Hello and welcome to Get Rich Slow, the podcast that challenges the conventional get rich quick ideology and instead explores what authentic success really means and how you can achieve it. I'm Hannah Martin, the founder of Talented Ladies Club, and today I am joined by founder of a women's business peer support and mentoring community and business investor, Nikki Tapley, for an episode on abundance mindset. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much for joining me. Before we get started, there's one question I always ask my guests, and that is, what does success mean to you?
That is a great question, Hannah. And for me, success is about finding fulfillment and enjoyment in your everyday. Getting up in the morning with a zest for life, being excited to get out of bed and live the life that lies ahead of you that day. But it's also about feeling that you are doing something worthwhile in the world and living your life with purpose. So I'm a big believer in living for today, but also planning for tomorrow to make the very, very best of every day. So for me, success is living that and walking that every day and enjoying that process.
Great, thank you. I know this it's a perfect question to ask actually at the start of this particular podcast episode, because it's kind of like we're talking about abundance mindset, which this really taps into. So what's your background? Obviously, there's quite a lot that you do. What's your career to date?
So I historically started my career in PR and comms, and I went into marketing, but I moved from there into social work because I actually felt quite unfulfilled by working in corporate in marketing, and I felt that I wanted to do something that was actually felt to me more meaningful. And I was very much at the beginning of my career life. I hadn't done any real personal development. I didn't really know myself very well, but I was just following my gut instinct. And I just felt that I wanted to do something more purposeful, I suppose. But throughout my career, I've always run businesses alongside. So I was somebody, for your listeners, anyone that's read Rich Dad, Poor Dad will probably identify with this process that I've been through of feeling that my life was always going to be a particular way. I would go to school, work hard, study hard, qualify in a profession, get a job for life, and that would be me. But it's never really sat right for me. It's never felt authentic to me. And so although I've gone along with it, there was this little part of me, this entrepreneur inside, that was just itching to get out. And so although I followed the career path, I've always run businesses alongside since the age of 20. So it's been 17 years of running businesses, but it took me until I had my children to be empowered enough to start asking bigger questions about purpose and to start to want to create a different life for myself and my family. So it actually, funnily enough, the main reason that I left my social work career at the time that I did was because I couldn't work flexibly around my family, and I wanted to put my family first. But I knew that I had a skill and a sort of natural gift in business. So I decided to take the plunge and take it seriously, as I called it, and stop playing with business and really go for it. And that was the first time that I ever believed that that was even a viable option for my life, because I just never even considered it. But coaching had led me to that point where I really felt that was what I needed to do at that time in my life. And so that was about 5 years ago, and my daughter's now 6, and so I've been running my businesses ever since. I do miss the social work profession. I miss being able to help people in a meaningful way, but I found other ways to find meaning and purpose in business that are very, very fulfilling for me. So that's where I'm at. I'm running businesses. I still have that kind of social worker heart inside of me to do good and to kind of change lives and empower people to step into their full potential and really explore what they're capable of. I'm very much about strengths-based approaches for individuals and empowering people to see what they're capable of, what they can really do, but they have to believe it, they have to really see that that's their potential in order to step into it. And I think that's where so many people struggle. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Okay. So moving from that, so like that's kind of where we kind of leads us neatly to the concept of abundance mindset. So what is that, and why is that important?
So abundance mindset is about coming from a place inside of you that knows that you are and you have everything that you need within you. And that affects how you live your day to day. It is a mindset. It's almost a decision that you make to adopt this mindset you can have an abundance mindset even when you might look at yourself in comparison with others and think, well, I have comparatively little. You can still have an abundance mindset because it's a choice that you make to see your life as one of abundance. So for me, it starts with gratitude. It starts with understanding that everything you have to some extent is a gift. You know, your life in itself, you didn't choose to come into this world. So the very fact that you're here is a starting point. So I always say to people, when it comes to abundance mindset, start with gratitude and start with, I have breath in my lungs. If you can't find gratitude for anything else, if you're having a really bad time and you've got really difficult circumstances, it's about recognising that even the breath in your lungs is a gift. The roof over your head is a gift. The fact that you have a bed to sleep in is a gift. And we are so privileged, but often we take that for granted. So for me, abundance mindset is about recognising that we have so much to be thankful for. We have abundance and we have everything we do need within us. If we wish to create different circumstances for ourselves, there are things that are outside of our control, but there are many things that are inside our control. And so the way that we choose to live, we change when we adopt an abundance mindset. It's also for me about how we go through life. And so if we have an attitude of abundance, if we feel and we kind of believe that we are abundant and we have all we need, then it causes us to behave differently and interact differently in the world around us with people, with the activities that we're doing. It changes our perception and it enables us to engage with people without being needy, without sort of demanding things from people, but instead asking different questions, better questions that lead to better outcomes for us. So it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that's why a lot of coaches talk about abundance mindset, because you can control your mindset. You can decide to think a certain way, but actually in thinking a certain way, you then behave a different way. And it's that behavior that brings about good things. And I just love that. I love that we have that power within us to control how we think, how we behave, and therefore what comes next for us.
So it's about a shift of focus then. So rather on focusing on what we don't have, focusing to start with on the things that we do have, you know, and all of us have things in our life that we could be grateful for, which then leads us to a sort of mindset less of, I lack this and I'm just looking to try and get the things that I don't have and I want and need, and more about I have wonderful things and I can share them with other people, and I don't have to be so have that negative kind of poor me, woe is me, I'm lacking, but rather actually I have things, because there are always going to be people who have more than us, aren't there, and always people who have less than us, and we can choose to sort of look to the people who are luckier or have greater wealth or more happiness and think, oh, my life is poor because I'm not like them, but actually we can look at other people and say my life is rich because I have things that I value that maybe someone doesn't have those things. I know that abundance mindset is something that we hear quite a lot, and you talked about coaches, and I see a lot of coaches talking about it, and a lot of cases where they use it as for traction marketing, and it's often used to sort of actually mask a kind of, in this ironically, a lack of really kind of tangible kind of things that you can learn. It tends to be a bit of a kind of catch-all bucket. However, I also know abundance mindset is actually really, really important, and it is grounded in science. I mean, the science shows that that it's connected to resilience and a growth mindset. So it is actually scientifically a better way to position your brain. How was some of the benefits that you personally have seen from switching this mindset, and people that you've worked with? What are some of the things that you've seen them gain from that?
So I think what I've noticed in observing people who adopt an abundance mindset by choice is that they are abundant. They have a joy in their day-to-day. And for me, it is about that joy. It's not about how much or how little you own. Material items and possessions don't make you happy. They may make your life a bit easier. They may make your life more comfortable. They may bring you satisfaction and joy at times. But that joy is generally short-lived unless you're practicing gratitude and regularly focusing on what wonderful gifts they are to have in your life. And that again comes back to an abundance mindset. But what I observe in people who I would consider to be highly successful in business is that they come to the business table with a genuine attitude of abundance. And so as they're in conversations, as they're in negotiations, as they're in discussions, They come from what I call a pure business perspective, which is what is the right thing to do for everyone involved here? What is the right step for this business, for its longevity, for its sort of sustainability, but how can it also make sure it's looking after all the people involved in this? And what I observe in leaders with an abundance mindset is they are, to my mind, what I consider to be good leaders. They care about people. They care about the impact of their actions on others, because they recognise that they have everything they need. So everything that they bring to the world is actually about adding value and giving rather than what they can take. And so naturally, when they come to the negotiation table, when they're looking at how they can grow their business, they're actually thinking about how they can bring a positive impact through what they're doing, rather than grabby, what can I take, what do I need, and being very protective and fearful. It's that fear mindset and that fixed mindset versus the growth mindset and that abundance mindset. And I think when we see abundance mindset at play, we see people that are joyful, we see people that are fruitful, we see people who are happy. And I think often I notice people in the pursuit of happiness, but really what they're in the pursuit of is a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction and joy. And I think that comes with an abundance mindset. If you are joyful and you are grateful, you are probably somebody who already has an abundance mindset, and you may not even realise it. And I think I'm one of those people. I've had times in my life, personally, in my lived experience, where I have very much had a lack mindset, scarcity mindset, poverty kind of mindset. And it's not been a fun place to be. And it was only in coaching that I became aware that my thinking was the thing that was actually causing me to feel miserable. It's all within us. And so this is why I think that talking about abundance mindset absolutely has a place, and that coaches need to be talking about this with their clients and helping them to see that they can rewire their brains. They can change in the science. You talked about the science. We can change the way that we think. NLP, neuralistic programming, coaches that use that kind of skill set can help us to rewire how we see things and how we think. And it's in changing how we think that we can really be released into enjoying our lives. So for me, yes, it's joy. That's the thing that I notice, and it shows up. There's a subtle difference. I think I'm online, all the time because of my businesses, and I do notice it, exactly what you're saying with attraction marketing. There are some people who will show up, and it's almost like a big facade that my life is so wonderful and everybody in it is so fabulous, and it's loads of positive messaging and lots of big emojis. But when you actually meet them, their behaviour is very, very different to the words that they're using. And it's because we do know that abundance mindset is attractive. The joy that we find in life, it's very attractive to people because it's what we all really want. All we really want is to feel that we have joy and purpose in our lives. So when we see people that seem to ooze that and exhibit that, it is attractive. But you have to be authentic in that because it's very, very obvious and apparent when there isn't a congruence there and it's inauthentic. And people see through that very quickly. And at that point, you lose their trust because they realise that you're being dishonest.
Absolutely. And I think that there's two kind of key, to me, sides to abundance. So one is the material abundance, so abundance of possessions that you might want or need, or abundance of wealth. And the other side is an emotional abundance. And I think, to me, the former is the more important because, literally that there is an abundance of joy available to you, an abundance of inner peace available to you. There is no kind of finite kind of level to that. But the only limit really is on what you allow yourself to feel and what you give yourself permission to feel, that you're entitled to feel, or actively practice. And I, like you, I believe that just as physical things like smoking and biting your nails are habitual, our thoughts and feelings are habits. And we can change how we think and how we feel, and therefore how we act. But it takes time and it takes effort, and it will be difficult to start with because obviously you're more comfortable with familiar ways of thinking and feeling. But I feel like the material abundance often comes from practicing the former. I think, like you're saying, if you act in a very short-sighted way, because scarcity is a very short-sighted way of acting. I need it now. What can I do now to try and get me what I want? And often in things like talking about business and even career decisions you make, the ones that will ultimately lead you to abundance are often long-term decisions. It's about giving. It's about practicing generosity, but actually, and building good relationships that will last time, will come back to you. Yes, you can trick people and make $1 million in a year, but will you be there in 5 years' time? But also, even if you do make $1 million, when you go to sleep at night, do you feel happy? Do you really feel content? And I find that people who act from a position of scarcity, and a lot of these kind of business coaches who claim to have material abundance often have emotional scarcity of, there's this scarcity there and an emotional lack. And I think what we need to look at when we create stuff, when we consume stuff, does it come from a place of emotional abundance? Because ultimately you can go to sleep with £1 million in your hand physically and go to sleep crying and not feeling satisfied. Which brings me to something that we talked about when we had a conversation before this about the concept of ikigai. Which yes. I really love, and I know, and this is what where I really liked your perspective, because we shared a very similar one on this, and really I don't think you can have abundance without this. So, do you want to explain kind of what it is and why it's so important?
Absolutely, yeah. So ikigai is probably my biggest, most important go-to concept when I talk with people who are starting businesses and growing businesses, because I believe it's absolutely fundamental. And I'm only gutted that I came across it so late in my life, after many years of trying to figure life out. A good friend of mine sat down with me and explained this concept to me, and I've just been so grateful for that ever since. I want to spread the word because it's really, really good. So ikigai is the Japanese secret of happiness, but actually it's about purpose. And this is the kind of framing in which my friend presented it. I felt that I was lacking in purpose. I was feeling very unfulfilled in my life at that point, despite having material abundance and emotional abundance to a great extent. I couldn't understand why I didn't feel happy, and I felt that there was still this itch that needed to be scratched, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And this was his advice: go and read about this and explore it. So ikigai as a concept, it is about understanding that there are different components that make up a sense of purpose in our lives. And there are 4 key pillars to the concept of ikigai, which is making sure that whatever you're doing, it's doing something that you really love, it's doing stuff that you're really good at, it's doing stuff that you can be paid well for, and it's also doing something that you believe the world really needs. And that's all subjective. So you talked earlier about comparing ourselves and looking at what other people have got and what other people are doing. And I think it's really important when you're looking at purpose to recognise that what other people are doing, what other people have, doesn't actually matter. What matters is when we look inside of ourselves, what really matters to us. And from human to human, that will be different. But actually, I think most of us share some big similarities in terms of what really matters. For many of us, what really matters and what we really love is the people who are closest to us. It's about relationship and it's about people. So I think looking at ikigai and purpose, what do I really love? For me, when I went through this process of asking myself, what do I really love? It was actually all about relationship. It was about, I've got faith. It was my relationship with God, but also my relationship with my family and the people that really mattered to me. But beyond that, it wasn't material stuff. I love nice pink handbags and nice shoes and things like, a lot of women, but actually they're not up there at the top of my list of things that I love. What I love is all about people and enjoying experiences and feeling that I'm making a difference to people. So the way that I encourage people to go through the concept of ikigai, to help apply it to their lives, which I think it's important to talk about this, otherwise it can feel like a bit of a floaty concept. Sit down and write these 4 headings on a piece of paper and ask yourself, what do I really love? What really, really matters to me? And then what am I good at? What do I genuinely believe when I search my soul? What do I really know and believe that I'm good at? That I'm really good at? And it's hard for us to do that sometimes because we're taught not to be boastful and not to be sort of egotistical and to think how wonderful we are and to be arrogant. But actually acknowledging what your strengths are is essential if you're going to find fulfillment, because if you know where you're strong, you can play to those strengths. And then you can outsource the things that you're weaker in, particularly in business, or you can just leave those things and not focus on them and recognise that actually these are the things I'm really great at. So if I'm doing something with my time that enables me to be focusing on what I love and kind of making sure that the people that I love, or the things that I love are part of my day-to-day and my life is built around that, and I'm doing what I'm really good at, you're already well on the way to finding a huge amount of joy and satisfaction in your day-to-day. But when you add to that what I can make good money doing, if you really sit and think, what can I make good money doing? There's a lot of things. There's a huge amount of things that you can make good money doing if you have the right attitude towards how you set things up. you can earn good money doing an awful lot of things, but it's actually, what do you want to, like, with your skills and what you're passionate about and who you love. There are lots of things that you could make good money doing, but they all have to overlap. If you can make great money, let's just take coaching, for example, because we've talked about coaches making lots of money. You know, if you're a really successful online business coach and you're making your million in 6 days or whatever, then actually you might be making a load of money. But are you really doing what you're good at? Are you really a good business coach? Or are you just a phenomenal marketer who's understood how to get people to buy something? Because if you're not really good at business coaching, then at some point you're going to feel that there's a disconnect in what you're doing, and you're going to feel unstable and unsettled in that space. So at some point, if you're not doing what you're really good at, and you're doing things that you're not so good at, you're going to really struggle, and you're going to stop enjoying it. And you're also going to stop being paid well for it, because people realise that you don't have that natural skill. Now, please note, any online coaches listening to this, if you are genuinely very, very good at what you do, please don't take this as a slight on online coaches, because it is not. I'm not here to bash people over the head. But I think you can be paid very, very well for something and actually not be very good at it. You can be paid very well for something and not love it. And if you're not loving it and you're not really, really good at it, then at some point everything falls apart. So if you take any one component from Ikigai away, it doesn't work. You don't have satisfaction long term. And the fourth column, the fourth piece of the puzzle, which is for me the most important, actually, and it's the bit I think a lot of people are missing, which is, what do I believe the world really needs? And this is completely subjective. What do I believe the world really, really needs? More than anything. And you might have a list of things that you think the world needs, but what's your number one? What's the thing that you feel this world is maybe missing, or that makes the world as wonderful as it is? Because it's that thing that's going to be your cause. It's that thing that's going to be your mission. And if you lack mission, and if you lack a sense of cause, then you can do things that you love, and make sure that you build a life that you love, and you can spend time doing the things that you love with people that you love. You can be making great money, and you can be doing things that you're really good at. But actually, if you're missing that sense of mission and purpose, you're going to be unsatisfied. And that was where I was when I came across Ikigai. I'd almost naturally built a life around my family to give me the flexibility to be able to care for them and to raise them, because that was important to me. I loved them. I was making really good money in my business, and I was very, very good at what I was doing. But I lacked that sense of mission in what I was doing. And that led to a huge change in my life. When I realised that was missing, I had to start making changes. It also, having sat down and gone through this process, helped me to understand what I was really passionate about. And it was like understanding myself for the first time. It opened my eyes to the inside workings of Nikki. And as a result of that, I actually changed what I was doing to a great extent. I stopped running a business that I had, and I started doing other things. And it kind of lit a fire and a passion in me to start doing things that I felt were really meaningful. And so that was a massive shift in my life. And from that moment, I've really enjoyed everything that I'm doing, even in the hard times. Things don't always go to plan. People let you down, and, you know, you can get bogged down in woe is me mentality. But because I'm doing what I love and what I'm good at, and I'm making good money doing it, and it's lighting my fire, I'll put up with the rubbish that happens in life, and I'll almost gloss over it and go, well, that's okay because I'm doing all of this. It changes how you live your life. It changes how you feel about your day to day when you have that sense of purpose. And so for me, that's why Ikigai is fundamentally important for all of us. There is a final little piece on Ikigai which I feel potentially is missing as a model. I am sort of historically an academic, and I like to question models and go, is this complete? Does this really work? And I actually think that there is a fifth element to Ikigai that isn't written. This is my own little quirky thing, and I actually think that's your spiritual dimension, which is how does this link with how we're all connected as humans to the planet, and whatever your belief system is. Most people to some extent would accept and acknowledge that they feel that they're connected in some way. And actually, are you feeding your soul? How are you nurturing your soul in this? Because if you're not nurturing your spiritual self and your soul within that sense of purpose, there's still that little bit of you, I think, that's a little bit disconnected. And I think when people talk about being in I think a lot of people talk about flow state, when you're really in the zone and you're just loving life and everything just feels wonderful. Even when things get hard, you can just power through, and you might have little knocks and just little wobbles, but you just kind of keep going. It's because you have that deep sense of connection to the world that you live in, and to humankind, and to yourself. and potentially to a higher power if you believe in that. And I do think that's actually really, really important as well. And it's not really mentioned in Ikigai, but it does tie in. And for me, when I went through this process, I actually, the process of doing it was very much, some people call it meditation, I call it prayer, but with that attitude of that spiritual element of being led. What do I believe I'm really good at? What do I really love? What can I make money doing? And what do I believe is most important? Doing that with that spiritual connection, involvement in that process is exceptionally powerful. So you can do it without that. If you're not a spiritual person, if you're not into all of that, if you think it's all a bit woo and you don't really love that, that's okay. You can still go through this process and it will still have meaning and value massively. But actually having that spiritual connection into that adds extra power, I believe. So yes, that's Ikigai. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. There's a couple of things I sort of observed there, and we've got very similar sort of life experiences in this sense. And one is like what's really important, and I think is the belief that you are entitled to have a life that meets all those elements of Ikigai. That you can do something that you enjoy. You don't have to just do a job that you hate to earn money. You can be paid well for the thing that you love. You can bring something to the world and make a difference to the world. You can do something that you're really good at. You can use your talents. These are all really, really important things. And I think too often people don't believe they're entitled to it, don't believe it's possible. And I think, we are entitled to pursue that. And that's the second thing, that it is a pursuit. When you tell your story and how you've tried different things, you've been unafraid to make change, and you've been unafraid to be brave and to try something that may not work out, may not always work out. But by trying that, you find out, do I like that? Do I not? Do I take an element from that? Was it all just wrong? But I've learned something. And I think that's really important as well. And I think sometimes my life has had many changes. There have been things that have been right for me at a particular time. And then as I've changed or situations have changed, I've evolved for something else. So I think I love Ikigai personally. And I think what I really love about your story, what really comes across is I say, two things. One is that everyone listening to this is entitled to do things that they love, that have meaning for them, that change the world, and even in a tiny way. And changing the world can just be making cakes that people love and makes them happy. That's doing something the world needs. But doing something that lights you up. That when we're all going to die one day, when we die and we look back and we think that life had meaning to me. Like I loved my life, not every day maybe, but in general I loved it. But also being unafraid to try it, and that sometimes you don't find that life straight away. Maybe you have to try things to get there. So being unafraid, any age that you are now, it's never too late to start. So thank you.
Yeah, you're so right, Hannah.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on. Is it for lag?
You're so right. Sorry,
but carry on.
We'll get there. It's fine. No, I just wanted to confirm and affirm what you just said. I think my whole thing is encouraging people to be bold and courageous in the pursuit of purpose, because the worst thing we can do is have regrets. And even if we try things and we fail, there's always a lesson to be learned in our failures. And that lesson is a piece of the puzzle that is needed to create the kind of rich tapestry, the fabric of what our life is going to become. And so I liken life to a jigsaw puzzle, and it's a series of pieces. We can't always see them, some of them are turned upside down, but it's like you're building a puzzle without the box. You don't know what the end picture is going to look like. But in faith that it's going to be complete, you look for your corners, you look for your straight edges, and then you start to fill in the gaps. And I think Ikigai is sort of about putting your corners down. And when you recognise that only you can control that, only you can take the action to build that puzzle the way that you want to build it, but you have the right to do that. No one is stopping you. And for me, the one thing that I really wanted to just add to what you added is it's actually about taking power in your own situation, and not allowing a kind of victim or lack mindset to stop you. Because I think so often I speak with women who they don't believe that they're capable of controlling their next steps. They feel that they are a victim of their situation and they're unable to escape from that. So they're kind of stuck. And it's that feeling of being stuck that just really sucks. Nobody wants to feel stuck in a situation that they lack any kind of control over. But the reality is you can control how you see your situation, and you can control how you respond to your situation. And that in itself can enable you to change your situation. So I just want to encourage people to be bold and courageous in believing that they can change their own lives, but it has to start with you wanting to and being bold and courageous enough to make changes. And if you're not in that space, nothing will change. It's only you that can make that shift. And I think that is why coaches talk about it a lot, because how we live our lives and the experience that we have of life actually comes from within us. No one else can do that work for us. It's got to come from within. So I just want to encourage anybody that's listening, that's maybe feeling a bit stuck or a bit unsettled or a bit unhappy or whatever's going on, whatever the situation is, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a business, whether it's stuff that's going on in your life around you with people that you care about, you can still control how you respond to that. And you can still control the hat that you put on in terms of your mindset. And that in itself can change your very experience of the moment that enables you to move forward much more positively. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, because Ikigai is fantastic, but we have to acknowledge that it only comes from within us. Going through that process in itself is our decision. We can choose to start examining and exploring purpose, or we can choose to just stick with where we are because it's too scary to think bigger. It's too scary to break out of the moulds that we find ourselves sort of squashed into for whatever reasons. And so, you know, I think if people are feeling squashed and stuck, there's that if you're feeling that, that's a sign. That's actually an indicator that you're feeling uncomfortable, that you're being stuck. You need to explore that further, and you need to dig into that and ask what's that about. And that's the beginning of your journey of self-discovery, I call it. That's the very beginning of the process, but it's really exciting. But you can choose to start examining, or you can choose to shut it down and carry on in your tunnel vision. And that is where you lack the opportunity then to really explore what life's got for you.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the connection between abundance mindset and growth mindset comes into play, in resilience, because actually with that abundance thing, like, there is more for me, I am entitled to more, I can have more happiness or whatever, that you're able to make mistakes, you're able to be resilient in the face of that and learn and grow. This leads me nicely to my final question, which is, if someone is listening to this and thinking, I love everything Nikki has said, I absolutely agree with her. However, I feel really stuck. You know, I feel scared. I feel like I don't know how to bridge that gap. What practical advice would you have for someone that would take them from that kind of mindset to maybe stepping towards more of an abundance and growth mindset, and to practice some of what we talked about in this podcast episode?
Great question. So the first thing I would encourage you to do if you're feeling stuck is to start looking at who you surround yourself with. Are you surrounding yourself with people that are kind of keeping you stuck? Are the people around you in a very fixed mindset and in that same sort of place where you are? And it's about leveling up who you're hanging around with, because we become like the sum total of the 5 people we spend the most of our time with. So if you're spending a lot of time with people who are quite negative, who are very much in a fixed mindset, in a lack mindset, or, you know, dealing with a lot of struggles and troubles, then you can sort of be like a bit of a sponge and you can absorb that. So I'd say thinking about who you're spending your time with is really important. As you start to see a shift in your thinking, you'll notice naturally that you stay away from certain types of people, because you can see the drain and the damage essentially that can actually do to you, unless you're very, very resilient and very, very aware and protective. So I'd say look at who you're spending time with. I would also say start reading, start listening to TED Talks, start listening to podcasts like this one. Make sure that you are filling your mind with new knowledge about mindset. Mindset is not a fluffy subject. Like you said, Hannah, there is science behind it. We can change the way we think just by understanding more about how our minds work. It's chemistry, it's biology, it's how our brains are wired. If we understand that better by listening to people who have knowledge, scientific knowledge, there's some great TED Talks and people that are really skilled psychotherapists and people like that. The more that you understand about how your brain works, the more you can be empowered to choose what you do with it. So even if you may not be ready to start going, I'm ready to embrace, you know, this new walk of life, but I don't really know how to do it, start by understanding how you work. Start by understanding how you think. I also would encourage people to check out Brené Brown if they're not aware of her. And looking at daring to be different and to be courageous and getting yourself out there and not being fearful, because I think fear often holds us back from exploring our potential and starting asking ourselves these bigger questions. So if you feel that there's any element I don't think I could do this, it's too big, it's too scary. Brené Brown, her books are fantastic. She's done an incredible TED Talk. She's done, I think it's a Netflix episode, sort of short thing. There's loads of stuff about her online. So just immerse yourself, be aware that this is where you need to develop, and start looking for resources. Some of them will resonate with you, some of them won't. And that's okay. If you're starting to watch something and you think, oh, this is really not my cup of tea, just move on and find something else. But don't just let this moment go without starting to explore, because that's almost the worst thing you could do. You're basically putting a lid on your own growth if you don't start exploring this further. But your journey is unique to you. There is no cookie cutter approach to figuring out your purpose. You are unique in the way that you see the world and your experiences that you've had and your wiring. And so just immerse yourself in what's out there and find what works for you. And it will. If you're looking, if you seek, you will find. You will. You just have to trust that process. And it can be a bit messy. And so the other thing I would say is be prepared for things to get a bit messy. You're going to have to start asking yourself questions. You're going to start looking back on your life and looking at experiences that you've been through and questioning things. Was that actually right? Was that true, what I believed? Was this experience actually really damaging and made me see life in this particular way? We have to kind of understand where we've come from to be able to know who we are and then move ourselves forward. And so in amongst this sort of list of things to do, I would also say be prepared to get some coaching from a good coach, probably a personal development sort of, I would actually say sort of peak performance and leadership coaches are among the best type of coaches to work on this stuff with. Yes, mindset coaches, specialists, NLP practitioners, people like that, but you have got to make sure that you find the right person for you. They have to be aligned with you, otherwise it won't work. And there are lots and lots of coaches out there, so you can find the person that's right for you. Personally, I'm a person of faith, so I tend to work with coaches that share my faith because they see life from a different perspective, and that works for me. But, you know, the coach that works for me won't be the coach that works for Hannah, and the coach that works for Hannah won't work for someone else. So it's about understanding that being willing to get into the nitty gritty and pick things apart and go through that kind of, I call it, it's sort of that metamorphosis, like a butterfly sort of coming out of a cocoon as you go through your little kind of chrysalis phase, and it is mucky, it's sticky, it's yucky, but once you've been through it, you can break free and really explore all that the world has got. But it's being willing to invest in that, being willing to take a risk, perhaps working with the wrong person before you find the right person, but just recognizing that it is a journey and it's not something that you can just click your fingers and change magically how you feel. But what you can do immediately is decide to be grateful. And that is a practical thing that it will start changing your world immediately. If you decide that you are going to adopt an attitude of gratitude and you're going to wake up in the morning and just be grateful for the fact that you've just woken up, that your feet can touch the floor, that you can walk to your bathroom to do your ablutions. You know, every single moment is something you can be grateful for. And if you choose to do that, you'll immediately start seeing changes in your mindset and how you see the world around you. And that will make you feel better. And when you feel better and you feel more grateful, you'll start to make better decisions about your future as well. So those are my tips. I hope that's useful, Hannah, and not too waffly.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful. And I could also recommend that, we talked about the book of Ikigai. That is buying the book and reading that is a great place to start as well. I think that's, there's practical stuff that the book has that you can do. So thank you so much. So Nikki, where can people find you if they want to connect with you or want to kind of find you online or on social?
Great question. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. Those are my go-to platforms. I do exist elsewhere. I'm not massively present, but if you look me up, Nikki Tapley, you'll find me. There's not that many of me out there. If you're particularly interested in sort of looking at what I do and things, then you can, I'd say reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook. But I do have some work that I do with women, empowering them to step into their purpose and potential as business owners. And so if people wanted to look that up, that's inspireuk.org, so they can see what I'm doing there and reach out. With my email address and things are on there. People can get hold of me through that website as well if they want to. That's and I have a nikkitapley.com website as well. It's more about me holistically. So if anyone's interested in knowing a bit more about my story and also how I help people, then you're very welcome to check that out as well.
And just to say, Nikki's name is spelled Nikkitapley. So if they're looking for you, that's the way to spell it, because there's lots of ways to spell both your surname and your first name. So, but thank you so much, Nikki, for spending time today. Okay. Thank you, Nikki.
My absolute pleasure.